Hi guys, I'm Cash with CashedOutCars, and in this video we're going to be going over common problems with the B6 Volkswagen Passat. So this video is going to be aimed at people that own these cars and are trying to diagnose what is wrong with them, and it's also going to be aimed at people who are looking at purchasing one of these cars and want to know what to look for. So with that said, my car is a 2006 Volkswagen Passat VR6 4Motion. I'm going to cover general problems that come up with the Passat platform, and then cover engine-specific problems, and then also four-wheel drive problems. So, with all that said, let's jump right into it. So, general problems that come up with this car, we're going to start out with some smaller ones, are 1. Soft touch coating peeling. And what this is a coating that they put on the interiors of these cars to make everything feel soft. But on this generation of Volkswagen, they didn't do a great job with this coating, and it tends to peel and look not so nice. So with that said, you could buy replacement panels to get rid of this problem, or you could refinish them. I have a video on plasti dipping interior panels to fix this problem, but honestly I would recommend just buying a replacement part if it bothers you that much. But it is fairly common in these cars, so look for it. Additionally, the door hinges on these Passats are known to get extremely creaky. Now on my car, they're very, very loud. The previous owner clearly tried to keep them lubed because they're soaked down in lubrication, but they're still very loud and starting to rust a little bit. So if you're concerned about door creaks and it's really going to bother you, maybe look elsewhere, or definitely keep up with maintenance and lubrication on these hinges. Next up is electronic window issues and failures. So my driver's side rear window doesn't go up or down at all, and the rest of my windows are generally pretty good, but once in a while the automatic feature on the windows just stops working. I'll press the window to get it to go down, it'll go down and then come back up, and sometimes it just loses its mind and does what it wants to do, not what I want it to do. An additional problem that's pretty general to most Volkswagens of this generation, but it's a problem that I've had on this car, is mirror flap. So the side mirrors on this aren't bonded very well to their backing plates, and they sort of flap against the plate as you go down the road. I've had this happen on this Passat and my two Mark V Golfs. So if you're worried about that, it's a very easy fix to do. I have a video on my channel on how to fix that, and it's not something you should be all too worried about. Next up is the electronic parking brake. Now, I think it's sort of dumb that these have electronic parking brakes to start because it's a lot more components to fail. But I've had trouble with mine. I know it's a common problem with other people that I've read about on the internet. So if you're worried about having an electronic parking brake fail, this has one, so it's extra stuff to break. Mine has gotten stuck on multiple occasions, and I haven't fully fixed the problem yet. I've mostly pressed the button, cycled the power on the car a bunch of times, and it made the problem go away. With that said, that's not a fix for the problem. I have to look into how to actually fix it right, but it is something that could break on these Passats. Next up, and this is actually one of the bigger failures, is the steering column lock failure. So this car has had that replaced twice before I picked it up. It hasn't had any problems while I've owned it, but basically the steering column lock gets messed up. It'll lock itself automatically and not turn off, and you won't be able to steer the car. So that's obviously a pretty big problem, and if you get in your car, start it, and the steering column's locked and won't move, you're not going to be able to go anywhere. So that's a big problem. There are fixes for it, and it was under warranty for a little bit, so it's definitely fixable, but it is something to look out for. So another thing that goes wrong with these cars are axle boots. So the axle boot is something that covers a universal joint, and if it rips, all the grease and lubrication that's inside could come out, and sand could get in, and that will wear out the joint faster. And basically you want to keep up to date with those boots. They're known to fail on these cars, and it's just something to look out for. Two more common problems are AC system failures. The AC compressors on these are known to fail. Once again, I haven't had that problem in the time that I've owned this, but it is something that's known to fail. If you do get that replaced and you get your system worked on, I've read that you have to do a full system flush to make sure you get all your contaminants out of the system and make sure that your AC system is good to go. A final thing that I want to talk about that is a semi-common problem also throughout most Volkswagens of this year is fuel door failures. So the fuel door on these cars were made fairly cheaply, and opening them is normally not a problem, but if you bump your fuel door, they're very easy to break off because of the design. My first Mark V that I owned had a missing fuel door. I've seen multiple Passats like this out on the road without fuel doors. So just be very careful with your fuel door if you own one of these cars, because they are prone to breaking. Alright, so now we're going to move on to engine-specific problems. In this video, I'm going to cover the 3.6 liter VR6 and also the 2 liter turbo. I'm not going to cover the TDI engines because here in the United States we didn't get those as an option. So I don't have any experience with either of those engines, but I do have experience with the 3.6 liter VR6 and with the 2 liter turbo. So jumping into it, with the VR6, the biggest thing you have to look out for is the oil pump bolt. Now, that is a problem that is on earlier VR6 models, specifically the 2006 and some 2007 models. And basically, they used a bolt that was not the correct grade, and if it fails, you're going to have major problems with the timing system of the car, and basically your engine's going to be junk if it starts to back out. So, to get to that, you have to disassemble pretty much everything on your engine. It's located right about here, straight down in the engine, and it's a huge job to get to. Honestly, what I would recommend is avoiding earlier cars unless you know that this job was done. With that said, mine is a 2006. There's no documentation that that bolt was replaced with the proper grade bolt, and I've just been sort of sending it and haven't had a problem. But if you're really worried about that risk, and it is a pretty big risk, avoid earlier VR6s. Additional problems that I've read about but haven't experienced for myself is the Serpentine belt tensioner is known to fail. The pulley that's on there wears out and basically goes bad, and then that could leave you stranded because you're not going to have power to your alternator, you could lose cooling, and all around it's not going to be a good time. So keep up to date on that if you're worried. Another potential problem that once again I haven't experienced is the plastic timing guides in this engine could break and clog up your oil pickup. So if you're ever driving around, even in general, and you see a low oil pressure light come up on your dash, stop, pull the car over, don't drive it, probably get it towed somewhere and look into what the problem is, and this will avoid a problem like that causing major catastrophic damage. One last problem that is common and that I have had is the Pcv diaphragm in this car is included in the valve cover, and to get to the valve cover it's a huge job. You have to remove your intake manifold, remove the valve cover, and then change that diaphragm or replace the valve cover itself. Mine failed. It makes the engine run very rough. It makes a high-pitched whistling sound, and all in all, it's not a good time. If that fails, there are some bypasses that you could do to basically make this not an issue, even though it's not the best way to fix this problem. But if that fails, that could be a fairly costly repair or a very large time commitment to fix that job. Other than that, these engines are actually known to be fairly reliable. Since there's no turbo, there's less components to them, and all in all, they're not horrible engines other than that oil pump bolt problem. With that said, mine does have some other small problems like oil leaks, but it hasn't left me stranded, and there haven't been any problems with mine other than the Pcv diaphragm. So now we can move on to the other option, the 2 liter turbo. Now, I don't have a 2 liter turbo in my Passat, but I did have a GTI that has a very similar 2 liter turbo in it, and the problems are pretty similar across all Volkswagen 2 liter turbos of this generation. So the first thing that you want to look out for is the cam follower. Now, the cam follower is something that rides on the high pressure fuel pump and rides against the cam, and as your engine's running, the cam has a lobe on it that pulses this fuel pump, and they designed this cam follower out of a material that wasn't really good enough for the situation, and the cam follower would wear through and your high pressure fuel pump would be riding on your camshaft. Now, what this would do is wear out your camshaft, it could ruin your high pressure fuel pump, and all in all, it could end up being a very costly repair. So if you're interested in that, I have details on how to replace one of these cam followers on my channel from when I had my GTI. It's not a crazy job, but it's something that you're going to want to keep up with if you want to preserve those 2 liter turbo engines. Additional problems with the 2 liter turbos are oil pump failures. Now, I did have this happen on my GTI, and it did cause the death of the GTI. So the oil pump on that car seized. The chain that drives the oil pump ended up snapping and breaking off the gear that drove the chain, And all in all, it was big problems for that engine. That one was also driven on low oil pressure, which you 100% should not do. As I said, if a light comes on your dash, pull over immediately and get the problem sorted out. But fuel pump failure is something to look into, and once again, if anything like that happens, pull the car over and go get it fixed, otherwise your whole engine will be fried. Additional 2-liter turbo engine problems include the diverter valve. So this is what diverts boost out of the system when you lift off. Earlier models, once again, had a fairly weak part that was later revised. So if you have a 2-liter turbo engine and your diverter valve hasn't been fixed and you feel a power loss or hear boost leaking, look into the diverter valve because that could be your problem. Another common problem is carbon buildup on the valves of the 2-liter turbo engines. Since these are direct injection engines, you're basically spraying fuel right over the valves directly into the engine, and with that comes carbon buildup. Now, this could be, once again, fixed and cleaned up. You could buy kits to basically blast your valves with walnut shells and clean them up, or you could have a professional do it, even though they're probably going to do the same thing. Now, if this problem starts to happen, and it pretty much will happen with the 2-liter turbo, you're going to have power loss and you're going to have fuel efficiency loss. So if you feel your car getting slower and you're getting worse gas mileage, get it checked out for carbon buildup because that could be your problem. 2 final problems with the 2-liter turbo are coil pack failures. I had that happen on my old car. And if that happens, you're going to get really rough idle and you're going to get misfires. And then also the PCV valve, like on this, even though it is an actual valve on the 2-liter turbo, goes bad, and then you're going to have a high-pitched whistling sound and your car, once again, is going to run rough at idle. So with all that said, is the 2-liter turbo a bad engine? No, but there is a lot of things that could go wrong, and in my experience have gone wrong. So you really want to keep very, very, very up to date on maintenance records if you have a 2-liter turbo and a VR6. But in general, with these German cars, keep them up to date on maintenance and they'll take care of you. As soon as you don't keep up to date with maintenance, they're going to break and give you big headaches and cost you a lot of money. So with that said, the last thing that I want to talk about with these Passats is the 4-wheel drive system. There's a Haldex unit that controls basically how much power gets transferred to the rear wheels, and that has fluid in it that is used to promote friction in the clutch discs. And if you don't keep up with this, that could slip, you could burn out clutches, and it could lead to, once again, costly, expensive, and timely repairs. So with all that said, those are all the common problems that I've found with the B6 Passat. They're problems that I've had and ones that I've seen other people have. If there's anything I missed or misspoke about, put it down in the comments below to help out our fellow Volkswagen community. Please like this video if you liked it and subscribe for more. I hope you stick around for the next one.